This is Future Fork, a show that explores the world of food and the decisions we can make today that will shape our future. On the show, you'll hear from innovators in the food space. We'll have disruptive conversations with people from around the globe who are taking the lead on topics like food sustainability, ending world hunger, food security, and so much more. I'm your host, Paul Newnham. In today's episode, we're talking to Stephen Ritz, founder of Green Bronx Machine. Stephen has worked as an educator and administrator in the South Bronx, transforming the lives of students through innovative educational programs centered around urban agriculture and sustainability. In today's conversation, Stephen will share his journey from a South Bronx teacher to a globally recognized educator and innovator. We'll dive into his groundbreaking work in creating edible classrooms, and Stephen will share insights on how he's incorporated nutrition education into the classroom. Let's get into it. Stephen, welcome to the show.
Paul, thanks for having me, and welcome to New York City, man. Two guys in hats. I wonder where this is going.
I love it.
It's true.
I love it. I love it.
You asked me to be here, so be careful what you ask for, man. But I am truly excited.
I am so excited as well. So there's so many things I want to talk to you about. So I want to start with, where did your teaching journey begin?
Right back there. So believe it or not, my teaching journey began in 1984. I'm a little older than I look. I had hoped to go to the NBA. True story. Actually tried out and didn't make it. Actually was overseas playing basketball overseas in Europe, got hurt and came home and didn't have a job. Turns out that New York City was hiring at the time. It was the early 80s. It was an unbelievable time in New York City history. Right as crack started hitting New York City, I was in the middle of the South Bronx. The South Bronx itself was burnt to a crisp, literally because I was very good at taking tests. Passed the teaching test with flying colors, got off an airplane in a cast, and had 8 job offers because I was a live body, not because I was competent. It was either me or nobody. They couldn't get people to teach. And literally was offered a job where when I got in the elevator and the elevator went down and the principal walked into the basement and said, "Oh, this isn't the 5th floor," I knew that's the guy I wanted to work for. Someone who knew even less than me because I knew we were going down. And I started my career at South Bronx High School. They gave me a bathroom key, 20 pieces of chalk, and said, "Don't let the kids out. Good luck," and gave me a prison program to run. And that's how I started teaching.
How did that progress, and how did you think about nutrition and teaching and curriculum and move from there?
So I had no idea about teaching, curriculum, any of that. Realized I started teaching before the internet, before cell phones, even MTV was just coming out, which is an interesting point. So I go back to the principal and say, "Hey, I'm teaching science." He goes, "Go to the basement. We probably got some books." So I go to the basement. I look for textbooks. There's a textbook, and in the textbook, it says, "One day man will go to the moon." Now, realize I did some undergraduate work at the University of California, and I was known to visit the mountains and, not always go to class, but do other things. So I said, didn't man go to the moon? And, the closest thing I had to man being on the moon in my reference was Michael Jackson moonwalking. So there was no Google. I wasn't even sure man went to the moon yet, but I knew Michael Jackson was moonwalking. And so began my career teaching science with kids who had been going in and out of prison. Long made short, the one thing that I was really able to do was connect with these kids. I was just as big, twice as strong, a much better basketball player, a hell of a dancer back then, not to mention good looking with a full head of hair. And I was able to connect with these kids at a time in New York City history where kids needed to be able to connect with someone. And lo and behold, was able to get some of the most difficult young people in school to show up and be participants, to put weapons down. And this was pre-metal detector. We had kids who could come to school broke on Friday and come back to school on Monday in a brand new BMW because of the drug wars going on. But I really enjoyed working with young people. And again, at a time before computers, there was a sense of community. Kids loved their block. There was kind of this loyalty to where you grew up and your entire community. And I felt like if we were able to coalesce around that, while I, too, was a very immature young adult, they and me might find some dignity in the process. along the way, that's how I started. But, nothing about food until 20 some odd years into my career. So I started with the ability to have a 45-inch vertical jump, just to give you some context. By the time I was 50, I had a 54-inch waist. I was 330 pounds. I was a diabetic, had a heart attack in school, and they were talking about cutting off my foot. So I really experienced full circle what food and aging and a lack of care can happen. And also at a time where we were just beginning to monetize children, if you will. And what I mean by that is this was long before the celebrity endorsed drinks and the internet and Instagram and social media. So it was neighborhood bodegas and that kind of thing. Then the fast foodization, if you will, the monetization of children came to the hood. And we had the clown, the king, the colonel on every single corner, but you couldn't get fresh food. We had food that was coming in for pennies on a dollar that was, based on an extraction economy, an addiction economy. And we got sick and fat really quick. Didn't know about vegetables, but, I could tell you 30 flavors of soda, liquor enhanced, all kinds of crazy liquor drinks in the ice cream containers, so to speak. So it really became an odyssey for me. As I started working with the most disconnected kids in New York City, I realized that most of them had food insecurity issues. They knew what being hungry was, but they didn't know what food is. And quite frankly, neither did I. So what started my work with plants that ultimately got me to food was a jobs initiative around green roofs and green walls, where my students and I was training them for employment, to work in the parks, to do green roofs, to do stormwater mitigation, things where if you showed up clean and sober, I was able to get you a job. And then we learned about food. Remarkably, I got a call from Nona Evans in this amazing chain called Whole Foods. And we were invited to go to the first Whole Foods in New York City. And no one invites me and my kids anywhere, trust you me. So we showed up at the first Whole Foods, me and 18 or 19 gang members. We walked through the door of Whole Foods. The security guard had a heart attack. My kids could have farted him across the store. But what my kids saw were people, white people, black people, Spanish people, paying cash for vegetables, for plants. We couldn't believe it. We got drunk on tomatoes. You look at the displays in Whole Foods, it was magnificent. Turns out Whole Foods was kind enough to incentivize us. And again, a big shout out to Nona Evans, a hero, I'm sure, in many of our spaces. And she allowed us to start growing vegetables and sell them there. And realized that most of my kids had come to me through the criminal justice system for selling other kinds of plants in smaller little bags, but not really having the good margins. So I gave a talk in 2007 called From Crack to Cucumbers. And I brought down 30 young folks who came from Harlem, Washington Heights, the South Bronx, who used to be selling crack, heroin, and cocaine daily for subsistence living, who got involved with the green movement. Now, I got in a little bit of trouble because, imagine admitting that there were kids selling and using drugs in New York City. So they went public about it, but that gave birth to a movement that really started kids with this whole notion of living wage, equitable wage, and it just took off. Then I accidentally gave this TED Talk, not knowing who Ted was. My dear friend Diane Hatch, who I'm sure invites me to do this talk. And I'm like, who's Ted? Where's Ted? The talk went viral. I never got to meet Ted, but people were really fascinated by the food I was growing. Turns out that 2 weeks before the talk, I was rushed to the hospital because I was obese at the time, and I had a hernia, and the surgery went really bad. I was so left from center, I didn't even know where right was. I had to go back to the hospital. They had to give me a colostomy, so I actually gave that first talk with a colostomy bag attached. And Diane wasn't even going to let me on the stage. I had to sign a release, but, I got up there. I met farmers. I met people from Grow NYC. People were really doing amazing things. So I got inspired and, gave a talk that I never planned to do that went viral, and the rest is history. Fast forward all of that. 2,200 living wage jobs later, I had this epiphany that it's kind of easier to raise healthy children than fix broken men. And I was working with little kids who were always getting in trouble and big kids who were always geting in trouble. And the common denominator is either came to school hungry or they came to school hopped up on something that they shouldn't have been eating anyway. The brilliance of marketing is that we have, immigrant parents spending $5 and $6 for branded energy drinks, thinking that they're giving kids healthy breakfast. We've got the clown, the king, and the colonel on every single corner. You wouldn't put vinegar in your porch, so stop putting poison in our kids. And I realized that food justice was a way to really get kids excited about eating, being healthy, and working with little ones when they grow it. Let me tell you something, Paul, you gotta come visit. Kale is the new normal in my school. And then when kids start growing food indoors, We've got to deal with issues around slavery, equity, migrant labor, all of that. So kids don't want to farm. It's hard work, not when you could be on TikTok all day instead of the hot sun. So bringing that farm indoors into a classroom where kids could use a phone, be involved and be engaged and see it and experience it was game changing. And the rest is history.
You've talked a little bit about the uniqueness of the space and the challenge and the link actually between community development, building communities, building and connecting with people, but also health. So talk to me a little bit more about the health. So you were not well.
Dude, not well. I was mighty effing sick, to be clear. I was 300 and something pounds. I was on God knows how many different kinds of medication. They were sticking my fingers. They were talking about this. The craziest thing is someone said, Stephen, you're going to have to learn to live with diabetes. And I was like, I don't really think I have to learn to live with anything. I'm a pretty resourceful guy. So I said, how do I reverse this? And by then there was this amazing invention. It was called Google. See, when I started, there was no Google in school. So I Googled up how to reverse diabetes. And I kept hearing about plant-forward diets and plant-based diets. All the things that I was led to believe were good for me were killing me. Understand, I'm first generation. My father came to this country with the hopes and dreams of putting meat on the table. And it was ultimately the food choices that he made that killed him, sadly and painfully and slowly. And I just wasn't willing to do that to my wife and daughter. I went from being, again, an NBA-style athlete, a guy who could jump literally over a Yugo. I'm going to date myself in the early 80s. So, aspirationally hoping to get to the toilet bowl rim because I was always sick. I lost 110 pounds in 6 months just eating the food that I grew with kids in school, and the rest was history. I realized, wow, maybe food is medicine. Maybe all this stuff I'm being told to eat and being sold isn't so good. I was in McDonald's 4 or 5 times a day, honestly. I was drinking over a gallon of soda a day, sugar-sweetened soda. I didn't even know that was part of the problem with diabetes. People, you just need medication. No, there's a much better cure. It's called drinking water. Wow. But, there are a lot of people making a lot of money off communities like mine that don't want us to know some of the easiest answers are right in front of us.
So fast forward now, you've had this journey. How does what you're doing now in the Bronx, how has the program come together? What's the focus? What are you really zeroing in on now?
Great question. So, people think I'm the salad guy. I am not. People think I'm the garden guy. I am not. The greatest lever, and I say this a month before an election, so please get out there and vote. Anybody who's listening, if you happen to be a United States resident, the greatest lever this nation has for equity and opportunity is public education. High-performing schools in communities of poverty are the greatest game changers in the world. It's not anything else. It's not about teaching a man to fish. It's about creating ponds for people to fish in. It's about creating our own entities. It's about understanding the cultural relevance of who we are and not waiting for a handout, but basically pulling ourselves up and out. So I learned at a young age, and I grew up in the middle of AIDS and unemployment and all this stuff. I could cure cancer. I could have cured AIDS. And people would say, that's nice, Steve. Talk to me about test scores and attendance. I really want to see kids going to college. I want to see kids being able to compete for jobs, not in our community, but in any community. So for me, it was the art and science, and Green Bronx Machine is about the art and science of growing food aligned to whole school metrics. So we teach school by simply using indoor gardening as a lens for reading, writing, math, school performance, attendance, technology. And that has been a game changer. We spent years developing curriculum. We didn't monetize it at all. Basically, we give it away. Again, our little friends at Google have helped us really learn how to do things for free and keep data that you don't need to monetize things. So my goal is to really turn the tide on public education. And I'm here to tell you that Green Bronx Machine doesn't just exist in New York City. It exists across the nation and around the world. We have schools in Dubai, in Qatar who use our program. We have some of the highest performing schools in the world, but in traditional communities like the South Bronx, Chicago, Philadelphia, parts of Texas, California, Indiana, Indianapolis, parts of Ohio, we have the highest performing public schools related to their peer index neighbors that outperform their peer index neighbors, not to the Stephen Ritz standard or the Green Bronx Machine standard, but more importantly, to public education standards. They outperform themselves on school report cards. So I like to say, we grow vegetables, our vegetables grow kids, and our kids grow high performing schools and happy, healthy children. And, a one-time investment of approximately $6,000. And if you were to tell me that a one-time investment in a school of $6,000 could transform attendance, test scores, teacher satisfaction, pedagogy, and social determinants of health, I would think I was growing some kind of other plant. But we have third-party verified data to prove it. You can do it. You just don't have to monetize it. Let's get the profit out of that nonprofit mindset. Let's not build entity. Let's build opportunity.
That's amazing. And congratulations on this model really having that impact and reach and scale, but also doing it in such a way that isn't trying to just control it, but release it.
Thank you for that, because for far too long, communities like nonprofits and for-profits have gotten fat off the dysfunction of communities like ours. They come in, they have a little cure that's going to do something. They move data a little bit. They want a ton of money. We don't want money. Listen, I live here. People say, oh, it's a great place to write a grant. Yeah, well, I'd rather it be a great place to live for the residents who are living there. So our goal was really to respect our community, our elders, our lived experience, and create something that was uniquely ours, that wasn't monetized. And that's what we've been able to do.
So how have you seen some of the effects of this program really come out in the communities that you're in?
I've got a bunch of vegans running around the middle of the South Bronx. Thanks to my friend Danny Nierenberg, we got our hands on some native Hopi corn that's been passed down and seed saved for 250 generations. And believe it or not, we planted that all across the South Bronx in front of known drug locations, liquor stores. And when you've got corn that has been passed down for 250 generations, kids get really excited about it. We've sent kids to college. Our school, so the school that we were in, one of the classically most underperforming schools in all of New York City, now outperforms the city and state. And let me tell you something. That doesn't mean we stop. That means now we start, because we're starting to equalize, because we've created a better school environment. We're doing better at attracting teachers who might not want to come to communities like mine. We're attracting kids who come through the system to come back. We've got kids who have come through our program who are now working for us. And remarkably, the myth of the South Bronx and marginalized communities everywhere is that people don't want to work. It's the welfare world. No, it's not. Last week, we took job applications from kids in schools. You have to be a kindergartner through fifth grader to apply. We had over 100 job applications from kids wanting to work. And you can get paid in eggs, library books, or art supplies. And you even get to clean the chicken coop. So we've been rescuing chickens from the butcher shops across the South Bronx, and that's been a lot of fun because it's created a whole lot of awareness around where our food comes from, because most kids didn't even know that the chicken that they're getting up the block was once a living thing. They don't understand that the beef that are in these toxic 99-cent hamburgers come from these things called cows moo that actually live. And most importantly, when you say that you can't get people to eat healthy food, we have some of the highest salad and vegetable consumption rates per kid in New York City, some of the lowest food waste per New York City schools. And that's a huge accomplishment. I take great pride in that. When you can teach kids that the water that's flowing out of their fire hydrants in the middle of the street is the same water that they need for their precious plants, guess what? I have the next generation of environmental stewards, of advocacy champions coming through my classroom. I have the next Sondra Sotomayor coming through my class, the next Barack Obama, the next Kamala Harris. They're coming, and they're sitting in my classroom. And we want to empower them and nourish them to reach what I call their genetic potential, because they, like everything else, are nothing more than seeds. And we're going to make sure they're well planted and well tended to.
In all of this work, what's the thing that surprised you the most? What's the thing that's really stands out and kind of surprised you the most?
What stands out is now sometimes people who didn't think I knew what I was talking about actually hire me and pay me for consulting fees, which is really kind of nice. So there's no surprise. This is common sense. I've always said that the answers for us as a community and for us as people is always right in front of us. So there are no surprises here. I'm just happy people are getting on board. And truth be told, take a look at our documentary, Generation Growth. And for those of you who are listening, please go to the website and check it out, www.generationgrowthfilm.com. The fact that we had this documentary that we could have sold for a huge sum of money, but instead decided to create an impact campaign so that other people could replicate it speaks to who we are as an organization, but the incredible appetite for this work, because nobody rises to low expectations. So the ability to set that bar high and then teach people and communities and teachers and parents and children how to get there is probably the most important work that I can do.
So how has your work influenced other areas at the moment?
Well, that's great, and thank you for that. More often than not, I hear my words coming out of other people's mouths.
That's great.
And I love that. So thank you for that. You should be giving me credit, but that's okay. Theft and imitation is one of the most lovely forms of flattery. And, if I'm doing something right and you want to steal it, that's great, but please don't charge so much money for it, because the bottom line is we're giving it away for free in the South Bronx. So there's that piece to it. The fact that I'm blessed to be on the Urban Ag Advisory Board, that when people need answers, they can come to me and that I'm accessible. But, the most important thing to me is, for those who don't know, during COVID, and we were named the COVID Food Heroes. Imagine an all-volunteer organization being named COVID Food Heroes. Is, my wife, who's in this room transparently during this interview, she came down with cancer during COVID. And we had not tens, not hundreds, but thousands of people come back to reach out to her. And these were sometimes kids who didn't always appreciate being in Mr. Ritz or Mrs. Ritz's classroom when there was homework to be done, where there were parent phone calls to be made. But 10 years later, 20 years later, they came back. So the fact that, I feel like I'm the unofficial mayor, if you will, or, the king of the kids union is really important. But I'll tell you what's really important. 2,200 living jobs later for kids in my community that has some of the highest unemployment, underemployment, chronic unemployment, and the worst social determinants of health in all of the nation, to be able to do that, to be able to build a farm that's prosperous for these young people in Appalachia, to be invited to the Pope, it's crazy to have a farm in Yankee Stadium, but again, we're just getting started. But it's the kids who show up daily and can't wait to be there. I was at school this morning, 6 o'clock, feeding chickens, and it's dark out, and we got kids outside feeding chickens, and, the sign outside says, eat more vegetables, eat less chicken. Don't bother them during working hours. To me, that's important. The fact that, our kids are composting in the cafeteria and growing our own soil in a community that's so toxic we can't even plant outside, and the community's not toxic. Let me be clear about that, and I want to retract that. It's what we have done to the community has created a level of toxicity. I grew up in an age of civil rights in the 60s. I'm a lot older than I look. I like to say I'm bringing sexy back, but, I grew up in an age where Black and brown people were fighting for equality. There were two water fountains, to be sure. They were definitely separate and not often equal. But, we've got Flint today. Black people today are fighting for their existence. When you look at what's going on in communities like mine, it's not about equality. We're fighting for the right to stay alive. How many more George Floyds do we need? So the stakes have gotten much higher, but they've also learned how to monetize us much better. All the more reason we need to take control of our lives, our food system, our education system, grow our own, circle around our own, and really create hyper-local, hyper-connected economies. And I love what you're doing, man. Eat more beans.
Absolutely. How can people support your work?
So first and foremost, we welcome a donation. You can go to our website, but I'm not asking for a handout. I'm asking for a hand up. So we love board members. We love corporate partnerships. Believe it or not, we have partnered with organizations across the country, including the New York Yankees. We love volunteer days. My days are usually spent separating the boys from the girls and then making sure everyone goes to the bathroom and do it all over again. You give me a team of volunteers from a corporation, I can get out there and build a farm. We just built the first handicapped accessible community farm and solar panel array in the South Bronx, open access. So it's about reaching out, making a difference. Please see the film. The film is Generation Growth, www.generationgrowthfilm.com. You can reach out to me at Stephen Ritz, Stephen, STEPHEN.RITZ at Green Bronx Machine. I'm on LinkedIn. You can send us an email to info@Green Bronx Machine. But most importantly, what can everybody do today? You could just be a little kinder to someone else, be a little kinder to yourself, and look at the tip of your fork and ask yourself, where did that food come from? Was that person paid fairly? Do they do ethical things for kids? Is it bathed in fossil fuel or supporting palm oil? Did somebody or something have to die so I can feel good about what I'm eating? So I'm so thrilled to be here today at Les Beaux East. We're debuting, the Green Bronx Machine Bowl. It's going to be sold around the world. It's a recipe that could be grown with kids in school. And we're going to put some beans in that bad boy too.
Absolutely. So 2 final questions just before we wrap. 1, cheese hat. Explain.
Easy question. And a big shout out to Will Allen, the original farmer from Wisconsin. But when I was once the dean of the worst school in New York City, We had a 17% graduation rate, 256 felonies per year in the building. Those are felonies. We had a police precinct in the school. And I became the dean of students because everyone kind of loved me. So the kids used to walk around and call me the big cheese because I was the dean of students. More often than not, I had a double slice of pizza in my hand and a 44-ounce soda. At 330 pounds, I was the big cheese. So it turns out I go out finally to Wisconsin to meet two people, Jenny Seidel from the Green Schools National Network and my dear friend Will Allen. And Will picks me up in a pickup truck that's higher off the ground than the plane that I flew in on. I'm walking through this airport and I see these cheese hats. And I'm like, the kids have been calling me the big cheese for years. I came back with the cheese hat, and let me tell you something. This cheese hat goes with me everywhere. I've worn it with presidents. I've worn it with Anthony Bourdain. I wore it when I visited the Pope. I've worn it to the Obama White House. And I was trying to lose the cheese hat, to tell you the truth, because I got a little sick of it. And during COVID, I stopped wearing it. And people said, Steve, where's your cheese hat? And I'm like, always getting COVID tested because I wanted to use it as a talking point in communities that were vaccine resistant. But people really loved the cheese hat. When I showed up once, people were really upset without it. So what I started was a campaign with young people in vaccine-resistant communities that if you got vaccinated with your parent and came to school, you could take a picture with me in the cheese hat and we posted on social media. We got thousands and thousands of kids vaccinated simply for the privilege of wearing a cheese hat. So I'm going to wear it till I drop dead. I'm looking for someone to help me manufacture more of them because the company went out of business during COVID. But what I want to do, and you'll appreciate this, is probably come out with a new kind of cheese hat that's made out of algae or some kind of compostable material. We're iterating, and that's the science of the work we do at Green Bronx Machine.
That's absolutely amazing. So the last question I always like to ask everyone is, what's something that you've enjoyed eating in the last week?
Well, I just had a really good scoop of avocado, and what I'm looking most forward to is going right downstairs from this interview in the main lobby of Le Botan East to try my first Green Bronx Machine Bountiful Bowl. And believe it or not, the proceeds from it are going to support programs like ours across New York City. So I'm super excited about having my Green Bronx Machine Bountiful Bowl. Please, if you come to Le Botan East, order the bowl, take a picture, tell people you love it. And we'll be having a big event here on October 9th, both live and virtually. So I can get you a link. And we'd love you to tune in and see the documentary, Generation Growth, www.generationgrowthfilm.com. Oh, by the way, we also have a TV show for kids on Green Bronx Machine Kids. You'd love it. And I want to do an episode with you. It's called Green Bronx Machine Kids on YouTube. It's all science and content-based 8-minute episodes every Wednesday. So come film. Let's do something great. And remember, you don't have to be great to start, but you have to start to be great. Do something kind today that makes you and yourself proud and love on somebody else.
I absolutely love it. And it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you today, Stephen. And thank you for joining our show.
Come on, man. Let's go eat.
Yes.
Two guys in funny hats walk into a restaurant on 42nd Street. What's going to happen next? Tune in for the next episode.
Thank you, Stephen.
No, thank you, Paul. Seriously.
You've been listening to Future Fork, a show that explores the world of food and the decisions we can make today that will shape our future. Future Fork is produced by Disruptive Consulting Solutions and supports the SDG2 Advocacy Hub. For more info, head to the website futureforkpodcast.com. This show was produced with strategy and production support from Wavelength Creative. So you don't miss an episode of Future Fork, make sure to subscribe to or follow the show in your podcast app. And while you're there, leave us a 5-star review. It really helps others find the show. I'm Paul Newnham, and I'll see you in the next episode.